The gorgeous teacher from my son's after-school art class sent me a message at 11:47 p.m. It was a secretly snapped photo of a king-sized bed in a hotel room. The picture was blurry, as if the shutter was pressed in a moment of extreme panic. Immediately after, a line of text appeared, delivered with a perfectly calibrated, innocent cruelty. She asked, "Mr. Carter, is this your wife?" I had just finished tweaking a logo. The client was a nightmare. A simple graphic, revised 17 times, only for them to choose the very first draft in the end. My name is Leo Carter. I'm a 35-year-old graphic designer, and I've long since grown accustomed to this kind of thing. My life feels like the grid lines I use in Illustrator, straight, precise, and utterly boring. A 900-square-foot condo with a 20-year mortgage. A son, Cody, in the second grade. And a wife, Jessica, who I once believed would be with me for the rest of my life. Everything was just enough. No more, no less. Shutting down my laptop, I tiptoed into the bedroom. The living room lights were off. Moonlight slipped through a gap in the curtains, slicing a pale, white gash across the hardwood floor. Cody was fast asleep in his room. I could hear his steady breathing as I passed his door. Jessica was already in bed, her back to me, lying perfectly still. The air smelled of her usual jasmine body wash. That scent always settled me. It was the smell of home. I slipped out of my clothes and carefully got into bed, terrified of making the slightest sound that might wake her. I picked up my phone, planning to set my morning alarm and go to sleep. Just then, the screen lit up. It wasn't a group chat notification or a spam text. It was a friend request on Facebook. The profile picture was a cartoon cat, lounging lazily. The name was Sarah Jenkins. My mind took a second to connect the dots. Right? The teacher from Cody's art class. At the parent-teacher conference last week, she had been standing on the little stage in a cream-colored sundress, smiling gently. She'd written her number on the whiteboard, so we could all stay in touch. Why was she messaging me so late? Was it about Cody? My mind raced as I tapped accept. The instant I did, a photo came through. No text, just a photo. My heart seized. The lighting in the picture was dim, like it had been taken from a hidden corner. The camera had been shaking, creating a slight motion blur. But I recognized the background instantly. It was a hotel room. The dark carpeting, the soft yellow wall sconce above the headboard, and a half-empty bottle of Evian on a nightstand. You can't fake details like that. In the center of the frame was the back of a woman. She was sitting sideways on the edge of the bed, seemingly talking to someone else in the room. She was wearing a revealing silk slip dress, emerald green. In the dim light, that green was like a deep, bottomless pool, making her skin look as white as milk. I had never seen Jessica wear anything like that. Jessica's pajamas were always the cotton cartoon kind, printed with teddy bears or bunnies. But that wasn't the point. The point was the bracelet on the woman's left wrist. A sandalwood bead bracelet. My breath caught in my throat. I felt a roar in my ears as all the blood rushed to my head. I had given her that bracelet 3 years ago for her birthday. I had just gotten a promotion and, gritting my teeth, spent nearly 2 months' salary on it. I remembered there was a tiny silver charm between the beads. I'd had the jeweler engrave a letter on it. So small, it was almost invisible. The letter J. On pure instinct, I whipped my head around to look at Jessica, sleeping beside me. Her breathing was even, her long lashes casting a soft shadow on her cheeks. She was sound asleep, like a cat, completely unguarded. My hand, moving of its own accord, reached out. Trembling, I gently touched her left wrist. It was bare. My hand recoiled as if I'd been hit with a taser. My entire body went cold. She cherished that bracelet more than anything. She said it was our special thing, that she couldn't even bear to take it off in the shower. Just last weekend, when we took Cody to the park, I saw her wearing it. When did she take it off? How did I have no memory of it? My phone screen lit up again. It was the text from Ms. Jenkins. Every word was like a red-hot brand, searing my eyeballs. Mr. Carter, I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm at a hotel for an art exhibit reception, and I think I saw your wife. Is this her? I stared at the sentence, reading it over and over. It was as if I'd forgotten how to read. As if by rereading it, the meaning might somehow change. An art exhibit reception? Dressed like that? With who? In a hotel room? Exhibiting what? A million questions, like overgrown vines, instantly wrapped around my heart, squeezing tighter and tighter until I couldn't breathe. I didn't reply. I couldn't type a single letter. I just locked my phone, placed it face down on the nightstand, and lay back down. Stiff as a corpse, I stared at the ceiling, my eyes wide open. Beside me, Jessica must have been disturbed by my movement. She rolled over to face me, her arm unconsciously draping across my chest. She mumbled something in her sleep, the words slurred. Her warm breath ghosted across my neck. The familiar scent of jasmine filled my nostrils. I felt like I was lying on a melting sheet of ice. Beneath me was a bottomless, bone-chilling sea, and I was sinking. I didn't sleep all night. My eyes burned, but my brain was like a supercomputer running on overdrive, refusing to shut down. That blurry photo, that damnable line of text, played on a loop in my head all night long. Dawn broke. Jessica woke up, right on schedule, stretching and letting out a lazy, contented sigh. Everything about her was exactly the same as always. The only thing different was my perspective. It was like I had put on a new pair of glasses, one that could see through every facade, exposing the dirty cobwebs hidden beneath the surface of our daily lives. I moved like a pre-programmed robot. Get up, brush teeth, go to the kitchen, open the fridge, take out the eggs and milk. I even had the presence of mind to draw a smiley face with ketchup on Cody's scrambled eggs. Jessica walked into the kitchen and hugged me from behind. "Morning, honey." She rested her chin on my shoulder, her voice husky and dependent from sleep. Before, this would have made me feel happy. Today, the touch of her body felt like a cold snake coiling around my neck. I stiffened for a second, then turned around as if nothing was wrong, placing the prepared breakfast on the table. "Better eat, or we'll be late taking Cody to school." She sat at the table, nibbling on a piece of toast while complaining about not sleeping well. I don't know what it was. I just felt restless all night. I looked at her and laughed coldly to myself. Right? Hard to get a good night's sleep at an art exhibit reception in a hotel bed. On the way to drop Cody off at school, Jessica sat in the passenger seat, touching up her makeup as usual. She stared into her compact mirror, carefully applying her eyeliner. "Leo, I'm meeting Megan and the girls for some shopping tonight. I'll be home late, so you and Cody go ahead and eat. Don't wait for me." Megan, her best friend, the perfect alibi. Her smile was as sweet as ever. She even leaned over and kissed my cheek. A smudge of lipstick remained, carrying the scent of an unfamiliar perfume. It wasn't the daisy she always wore. Without a word, I wiped it off with the back of my hand and smiled. Okay, have fun. From that day on, I became a detective living inside my own body. I no longer trusted anything I saw or heard. I only trusted the details. Details don't lie. The first detail was a secret in the trash can. On Thursday night, I was doing my usual chore of taking out the kitchen trash. Just as I was about to tie the bag, something caught my eye at the very bottom, a crumpled up ball of paper. On a strange impulse, I picked it out and unfolded it. It was a convenience store receipt. Time, Wednesday, 2:10 p.m. Location, the 7-Eleven over by the Northgate Mall. That was a 40-minute drive from our house. Jessica's office was in the opposite direction. What is she doing over there? The receipt listed only 2 items: a bottle of water and a box of Durex Ultra Thin. The last time we'd been intimate was a month ago. She was always saying she was tired, and the box of condoms I'd bought was still sitting untouched in our nightstand drawer. I clutched the thin piece of paper, my hand shaking violently. This receipt was heavier than any slab of concrete. It was a boulder smashing into the already turbulent lake of my heart. The second detail was the disappearing perfume. Jessica owned a very expensive bottle of perfume called Rose of No Man's Land. She called it her battle armor, something she only wore for the most important occasions or when she needed a serious confidence boost. This week, I had smelled it on her clothes twice when she came home late. Once, she said she was having dinner with her friends. The other time, she said she had to work late. I knew all of her friends. Not one of them warranted the deployment of her battle armor. And I was familiar with her company. She was an administrative assistant. What kind of overtime required such a dramatic scent to build up her courage? A scent doesn't lie. It was an invisible witness telling me she had gone to another battlefield, one I knew nothing about. The third detail was her phone's new safe distance. Jessica used to be careless. She'd leave her phone anywhere, on the couch, the dining table, even the bathroom sink. But now, her phone had become an extension of her body. Whether she was going to the bathroom or just stepping out onto the balcony to hang a single piece of laundry, the phone was always in her hand. Or it was placed screen down, squarely within a 3-foot radius of her at all times. Once, Cody was crying and begging to play a game on her phone. She reacted like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, snapping at him with a sharp, harsh voice. "Don't touch it." Cody froze, stunned, then burst into tears. In our 8 years of marriage, it was the first time I had ever seen her be that harsh with him. She realized she'd overreacted and quickly scooped him up to comfort him. I stood to the side, watching coldly. I knew exactly what was happening. She wasn't protecting her phone. She was protecting the dark, secret world hidden inside it. The fourth detail came from Ms. Jenkins. On Friday afternoon, I went to pick Cody up from his art class. Sarah Jenkins was waiting for me at the door. She was wearing a simple white t-shirt and jeans, a professional, gentle smile on her face. She handed me Cody's drawing and praised him. "Mr. Carter, Cody is very talented. He just seems a little distracted lately." I nodded, agreeing absently. I knew this was just the opening act. Sure enough, she paused, then added, as if it were an afterthought. "By the way, Mr. Carter, when I saw your wife at the hotel the other night." She stopped there, intentionally, to gauge my reaction. She was with a man. He was tall, pretty handsome, driving a white BMW. I thought for a second that maybe you got a new car. Her voice was soft and gentle, but every word was a nail hammered into my ear. A white BMW. Parked in our spot downstairs was our 8-year-old gray Volkswagen. I started having sleepless nights. My hair was falling out in clumps. The man in the mirror had hollow eyes, filled with exhaustion and suspicion. I looked like a ghost. Jessica finally noticed the change in me. But there was no concern, no asking what was wrong. Only impatience. "Leo, what is your problem lately? You're so paranoid all the time. Is work stress getting to you? Look at you. You look like a crazy person." Then, she started complaining about me. Said I lacked ambition, that after all these years, I was still just a junior designer with a dead-end salary. Said I had no romance, that for our anniversary, I only knew to take her to that little Italian place down the street we've been going to for years. Said I couldn't satisfy her. Not financially and not. She didn't finish the sentence, but I understood the look in her eyes. Her words were a dull knife. Not sharp, but sawing back and forth on my nerves, over and over. It hurt, but it drew no blood. I didn't argue back. Not a single word. Because I knew that when someone wants to leave, even your breathing is wrong. Anything you do, anything you say, will only hasten their departure. I was just waiting for an opportunity, for a final card to be played. Waiting for the moment I could connect all these loose threads into a single, undeniable web. And I could feel it. That web was already starting to take shape. 3, it's never the last straw that breaks the camel's back. It's every single one that came before it. And what broke me was a lie. A lie so clumsy, it was an insult to my intelligence. That Saturday was my mother-in-law's birthday. She's a decent woman, tough on the outside, but with a good heart. Though she always complained that I didn't have much ambition or make enough money. When Jessica and I got married, she never gave us a hard time, didn't even push for a big wedding. For that alone, I was always grateful to her. I took a half day off work, went to 3 different malls, and finally gritted my teeth and bought her a new, top-of-the-line massage chair. My hand was shaking a little when I swiped my card. That one purchase wiped out nearly a month's salary. But the thought of her relaxing in it while watching TV made it feel worth it. I also made reservations at her favorite restaurant, that new place downtown overlooking the city lights. Everything was set. At 3 in the afternoon, I called Jessica, telling her to get ready, so we could go pick up her mom together. The phone rang for a long time before she answered. The background was noisy, like she was in a large, empty space. "Hello, honey." Her voice sounded flustered and a little breathless. "Are you ready? I'm almost home. We can go together," I said. There were a few seconds of silence on her end. Then, she said something that sent a chill straight through me. "Leo, something terrible happened. My mom, she woke up this morning feeling dizzy. I'm at the hospital with her right now, waiting for tests. Her birthday. We might have to cancel. You shouldn't come over either." My heart dropped. "What happened? Is she okay? Which hospital?" I'm coming right now, I said, my voice rising in alarm. No, no, she shot back instantly, the words firing like a machine gun. It's just her usual thing, high blood pressure. The doctor said she just needs an 4 drip and some observation. It's nothing serious. You can't help here anyway, and you have to look after Cody. There's so much to do at home. Don't worry, I've got it handled. Her tone was final. It even carried a trace of impatience. After we hung up, I sat alone on the couch. The massive, unopened box containing the massage chair stood in the living room like a silent, towering monument to my own stupidity. My heart felt like a block of ice. I didn't believe her. Not a single word. Especially that breathlessness, that moan I hadn't heard in so long. I took out my phone, hesitated for a long moment, then dialed her brother, Kevin. He was a recent college grad, a straightforward kid who couldn't hide a thing. He was the only one in her family who still treated me like one of them. Hey, Leo, what's up? His voice came through bright and clear. I tried to keep my own voice steady. Kevin, Jess said your mom's in the hospital. Is it serious? The other end went silent. For 3 whole seconds. An eternity. Then, I heard Kevin's confused voice. Leo, my mom's fine. She's at home right now, playing bridge with her friends. She just made a grand slam. She's thrilled. My sister. She came by this morning, but she left after lunch. Said she had an emergency at work and had to go in. Work? What a great excuse. In that moment, I felt like something inside me had been completely hollowed out, leaving nothing but an empty shell. A lie. She couldn't even be bothered to come up with a more believable lie. She hadn't even coordinated with her own brother. In her eyes, I must have been so stupid, so pathetic, that I didn't even have the right to question her. She thought I would believe anything she said. I didn't call her out on it. I even managed to joke with Kevin for a minute before hanging up. I quietly canceled the restaurant reservation. And then I just sat there, alone, on the living room couch. From 3 in the afternoon until it was completely dark. The sky outside the window slowly faded. The room was unlit. It was just me and that enormous cardboard box, facing off in the darkness like 2 fools. I wondered if our marriage was like that unopened box. On the outside, it looked perfectly fine. But inside, it might have been empty for a long time. Around 9 o'clock, the door opened. Jessica was home. She flipped on the lights, her face wearing a mask of perfect exhaustion. She sighed as she walked in. God, I'm so exhausted. I spent the whole day running around the hospital with Mom. Her eyes fell on the massage chair, and she let out a fake gasp. You bought this? Oh, honey, I told you she couldn't celebrate her birthday today. Why did you buy it? Her tone was chiding. Such a waste of money. This is your problem. You're so impulsive with money. You have no financial sense. She bent down to take off her heels as she spoke. I noticed they were new shoes. Jimmy Choo. I'd only ever seen that brand in the fashion magazines at work. One pair of shoes cost more than half my monthly salary. There was a small, raw blister on her ankle where the new shoe had rubbed her skin. It was red and a little swollen. It looked a little pathetic and a little jarring. I sat in the dark on the couch, not moving. I just watched her perform. When she was finished, I finally spoke, my voice calm. It wasn't loud, but in the silent living room, it landed like a thunderclap. How was your mom's bridge game? Jessica's body went rigid. She froze in the middle of taking off her shoes. The color drained from her face in an instant. It was a chaotic mix of shock, embarrassment, and guilt that quickly morphed into pure, unadulterated rage. She stared at me for a full 5 seconds. Then anger won. Leo, she shrieked, her voice as grating as nails on a chalkboard. What is that supposed to mean? Are you investigating me? You don't trust me. After all these years we've been together, does our marriage mean absolutely nothing to you? She started to cry, a hysterical, theatrical, utterly victimized cry. The tears came on command, faster than turning on a faucet. She started pointing at me, lashing out like a madwoman, saying I had changed, that I was petty, that I was spying on her like some kind of creep. The massage chair I bought, the birthday present I had prepared for her mother, every single one of my careful, thoughtful gestures. She twisted them all into evidence of my distrust and control issues. She had successfully painted herself as a poor, helpless victim, driven to madness by her husband. And I was the villain. This was her weapon, using tears and accusations to turn black into white, to obscure the truth. We slept in separate rooms that night. I took a blanket and went into Cody's room. Breathing in the faint, milky scent of my son, I stared into the darkness, sleepless. For the first time, I seriously considered the word divorce. I finally understood. A home isn't destroyed by arguments. It's hollowed out one lie at a time. I was in a Cold War with Jessica for 3 days. The house was as silent as a tomb. We stopped talking, deliberately avoiding even eye contact. Only in front of our son, Cody, would we force stiff smiles, playing the part of a disconnected but civil couple. I couldn't take it anymore. This slow, torturous grind was worse than a clean stab wound. I needed an answer that would let me finally give up all hope. I decided to contact Sarah Jenkins. Not over text, not through a cold screen. I needed to talk to her face to face. I needed to look her in the eye and judge for myself whether every word she said was the truth or a lie. On Monday afternoon, I took off work early and went straight to the art studio where Cody took his classes. I sent her a text, saying I had a question about Cody's progress and wanted to ask her in person. She replied quickly. A single word, okay. We met at a coffee shop near the studio. It was quiet in the afternoon, nearly empty. Sunlight streamed through the large plate glass windows, illuminating tiny dust motes dancing in the air. Sarah looked more worn out than when I'd seen her at my front door. She wasn't wearing any makeup. Her face was pale, with faint dark circles under her eyes. She wore a simple gray knit sweater, giving her an air of fragility. She didn't seem like a gloating informant. She looked more like me, another victim swept up in the same storm. She ordered an Americano, but didn't drink it. She just stirred the cup with a small wooden stick, her eyes fixed on the street outside, avoiding my gaze. Silence. Awkward silence. Finally, she was the one to speak. Her voice was soft, laced with apology. Mr. Carter, I know. What I did was intrusive and maybe even cruel. I didn't say anything, just looked at her, waiting. The man in the photo. She paused, as if choosing her words carefully. His name is Rick Vance. He's my ex-boyfriend. My heart sank like a stone. Of course, in this story, there was no such thing as a random act of kindness. Sarah's voice was quiet, but every word was a death blow, like a small hammer chipping away at my last shred of denial. Rick Vance, the owner of a small investment firm, drives a white BMW 5 Series. He and Sarah had been together for 3 years. 6 months ago, at a networking event, he met Jessica. Jessica told Rick her marriage was already over in all but name, that her husband was a failure, earning a dead-end salary, unable to give her the life she wanted. She said all she felt in our home was suffocation and despair, and Rick appeared like a savior. He promised Jessica that if she divorced me, he would marry her immediately. He would give her a big house, a luxury car, the life of a true trophy wife. He's not rich. A bitter, deeply ironic smile touched Sarah's lips. His company is a shell, drowning in debt. He has creditors chasing him all day. That BMW is leased. It costs him over $1,000 a month. When he was with me, he blew through over $20,000 of my money. He's a con artist, a bottomless pit. He went after your wife because he thinks she's naive and easy to manipulate. But why would he want her to get a divorce? I asked, confused. What was in it for him? Because of your condo. Sarah finally looked up at me. Her eyes were filled with pity. Rick did some digging. Even though you made the down payment before you were married, the title has both of your names on it. And she took a deep breath, delivering the most chilling line of all. He's been coaching her, telling her to find ways to collect evidence that you're abusive. If she can prove you're the one at fault in the marriage, she can take the majority of the assets in the divorce. Maybe even leave you with nothing. With that money, Rick can pay off his debts and start over. Abusive? I was stunned. In my entire life, I had rarely even said a harsh word to Jessica. He's teaching her how to fake it. Sarah took out her phone, pulled up a photo, and showed it to me. It was a screenshot of a text conversation. One was between Rick and a friend named K-Man. Rick had sent a smug voice message, which the system had transcribed in a text. Dude, this chick is a fast learner. I showed her a trick with egg whites and soy sauce. Makes bruises on her arm that look totally real. She snaps a few pics, gets a couple of friends to back her up, and her loser husband won't have a leg to stand on. The other screenshot was Rick bragging to his inner circle. He'd taken a picture of Jessica's new Jimmy Choo shoes with the caption, "Fish on the hook. Time to reel her in. Married women are the easiest. A few cheap gifts and they're head over heels." I stared at the vile, flippant words on the screen. I felt the blood in my veins turn to ice, starting from my fingertips and freezing my entire heart. This wasn't just an affair. It wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a calculated, vicious conspiracy. A trap set just for me. They didn't just want to destroy me emotionally. They wanted to bleed me dry. And then they wanted to brand me with the label of abuser like a searing hot iron on my forehead. To ruin my reputation and leave me with absolutely nothing. I felt my hands shaking. I handed the phone back to Sarah, my voice hoarse. Why? Why are you telling me all this? Sarah's eyes reddened. Because I can't stand it. She said, "I loved him, Mr. Carter. I gave him 3 of the best years of my life. And in return, he treated me like an idiot, like his personal ATM. I can't stand the thought of him getting away with it. And I don't want to see another woman's life get destroyed by him." Her motives were complex. A mix of vengeful satisfaction and a lingering thread of sympathy for another woman. But whatever her reasons, she had helped me. I thanked her, sincerely. When I walked out of the coffee shop, the afternoon sun was blinding. I squinted at the bustling street in front of me. The world was still turning, moving along as it always did. Commuters rushed by, delivery drivers weaved through traffic. But my world had completely collapsed. All that was left was a pile of rubble. I stood there, amidst the ruins, and took a deep breath of air thick with exhaust fumes. The suffocating pain in my chest slowly hardened into something cold and sharp. Anger. No, it was more than anger. A thought, like a dark seed, burst through the soil of my mind, sprouting poisonous vines. You want to leave me with nothing? You want to ruin my name? Fine. That's fine. Then I will make you spit out every last thing you've taken, with interest. I won't just leave you with nothing. I will personally drag you both to hell. I went home. The moment I walked through the door, I felt like I had stepped into someone else's body. It wasn't the heartbroken, desperate Leo who had returned. It was a avenger, wearing a mask of meekness, with a butcher's knife hidden in his heart. Jessica was on the couch, wearing a face mask and watching TV. When she heard the door open, she didn't even turn her head, just let out a cold huff. The Cold War was still on. Or so she thought. I changed my shoes and walked over to her. Then, as she stared at me in stunned silence, I leaned down and gently hugged her. Her body instantly tensed up, hard as a rock. "Jess, I'm so sorry." My voice was perfectly calibrated, a mix of hoarseness and exhaustion. "I've done a lot of thinking these past few days. I was wrong. I took all the blame. I told her work stress had been getting to me, that a project was going badly, and that's why I'd been so anxious and paranoid. I told her I never should have doubted her, and that it was unforgivable for me to have called Kevin to check up on her. I told her we'd been together for 8 years, that I couldn't live without her, without our family. I had rehearsed every line in my head 1,000 times. The tone, the pauses, even the rhythm of my breathing, all calculated with precision. Jessica was clearly not expecting this. How could the man who had confronted her so fiercely just days ago suddenly do a complete 180 and beg for forgiveness? The suspicion in her eyes slowly dissolved, replaced by a familiar look of smugness and contempt. I knew what she was thinking. She thought she had me wrapped around her finger again. She thought I couldn't leave her. She thought I was still that same weak man who would fold at the first sign of her tears. From my wallet, I took out the entire bonus I had just received. $300. It wasn't much, but it was what I'd earned from pulling several all-nighters. I tucked the cash into a small envelope and pressed it into her hand. "You've been stressed out too, honey. Take this. Go buy yourself something nice. Please don't be mad at me anymore, okay?" She accepted the envelope with a show of reluctance. A smile finally appeared on her face. Her tone softened. "It's okay, Leo. As long as you know you were wrong. We're a married couple. The most important thing is trust. Don't ever do that again. You hear me?" "I hear you. I hear you," I said, nodding like a bobblehead, like a dog, begging for a pat on the head. I played my part flawlessly. I almost believed it myself. From that day forward, I became the world's most considerate, most forgiving, most clueless husband. When she came home late, I stopped asking questions. I would just quietly heat up her dinner in a microwave and wait for her. When she ran up the credit card, buying one expensive purse and outfit after another, I would just smile and say, "You look beautiful. You look good in everything." When she talked on the phone until midnight with her so-called friends, her flirtatious giggles spilling out from behind the half-closed bedroom door, I would just put on my headphones and pretend I was asleep. My submission, my groveling, made them drop their guard completely. They thought I was a tiger whose teeth and claws had been pulled. Safe. Harmless. Their phone calls became more and more brazen. Sometimes, while I was sitting in the living room watching TV, Jessica would slip out onto the balcony and coo at Rick in a voice she thought was quiet, but which I could hear perfectly. "Stop it, my husband's right there. I miss you too. Soon, it'll be over soon." They had no idea. In the corners they couldn't see, the web I was weaving was already closing in. I went online and anonymously bought a micro recorder. It looked like a generic black flash drive. One day, pretending to look for something, I accidentally dropped it into the crevice behind the sofa cushions. The location was hidden, but it had a clear line of sound to the balcony. I also bought a pinhole camera disguised as a portable power bank. I placed it in a corner of the entertainment center, amongst a pile of clutter. Its lens had a perfect view of the entire living room. These cold, electronic devices became my silent eyes and ears. They faithfully recorded every filthy conversation, every venomous plan. Those recordings became the sword of Damocles, hanging over their heads. I knew their ultimate goal was the condo and the money in our savings account. I had to act first. I forged a fake company capital verification notice, complete with a professionally made fake stamp. I told Jessica my company was bidding on a major project and that all key employees had to provide proof of significant personal savings to demonstrate the company's financial stability. It was just a formality, I explained. The money would be transferred right back as soon as the check was done. Jessica wasn't a business person. She didn't understand any of it. That, combined with the fact that Rick was surely pressuring her to get the money, made her agree with little suspicion. We went to the bank together and transferred the entire $20-something thousand from our joint savings account into my personal account. After it was done, I showed her the fake verification agreement I had printed. She left the bank satisfied. She thought that money would soon be in her hands, and then in Rick's. She had no idea she would never see it again. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed public opinion on my side. Before they could smear me as an abuser, I needed to plant a seed of doubt in the minds of our neighbors. Using my mother's information, I created a new Facebook profile. The profile picture was a blooming lotus flower, the kind of sweet, middle-aged woman would use. I easily got accepted into our neighborhood's community moms group. I never started conversations. I was just a silent observer. But at just the right moments, I would casually share some life wisdom. For instance, when someone complained about her husband not being around, I'd comment, "Oh dear, it's not right for a man to neglect his family. But sometimes you have to wonder if the wife is playing her part. There's a young woman in my building who has been dressing to the nines lately, spending money like crazy, and won't listen to a word her husband says. I just don't know what's gotten into people." When someone posted asking for advice about marital arguments, I would share a thought-provoking article with a title like, "How a Family Falls Apart." It often starts when a wife begins to resent her husband. I never named names, but every detail was tailored to describe Jessica. It's just human nature. People love to gossip. I planted one seed of doubt after another. I waited for them to take root and sprout in the minds of my neighbors. Every day, I played the part of a loving husband, completely oblivious to the impending betrayal. It felt like dancing on a razor's edge. Every time I forced a smile for her, every time I listened to her practice lies, my heart bled. But I told myself to hold on. A hunter must have absolute patience before pulling the trigger. And I was going to be the most patient hunter of all. 6. I had gathered enough evidence from inside the house. But I knew it wasn't enough. Jessica was just a pawn, blinded by greed. The true mastermind was Rick, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. To truly destroy them, I needed something on Rick. Something fatal. Something that would not only ruin him forever, but maybe even put behind bars. I needed an opportunity, a way to make the snake slither out of its hole. Sarah helped me create that opportunity. Or rather, we created it together. I contacted her again. This time, I wasn't a helpless victim. I was her ally. We met at the same table in the same coffee shop. I laid out my entire plan. Sarah listened, silent for a long time. Finally, she nodded. Leo, you're more ruthless than I imagined. Her expression was complex, a mix of surprise, fear, and something else. Relief. I'll help you, she said. Sarah knew Rick better than I did. She knew all his weaknesses: greed, arrogance, lust, and above all, a desperate need for cash. We tailored a trap specifically for him, based on those weaknesses. A sweet, irresistible trap. Through a trusted friend, Sarah arranged for a big client to be introduced to Rick. The client's persona was a super wealthy, recently divorced woman who had received a massive settlement from her ex-husband. Being inexperienced with investments, she was looking for a professional, reliable financial advisor to manage her assets. I became the chief designer behind this heiress. Using my professional skills, I worked for 2 sleepless nights, forging an entire portfolio of bank statements, stock holdings, overseas trust documents. Every image, every number was flawless. Good enough to fool any so-called expert. Sarah handled the online communication with Rick. She used a new burner phone and created a new social media profile. The profile picture was a woman in oversized sunglasses, her face obscured, with the beaches of the Maldives in the background. Her feed was a curated collection of luxury goods, first-class plane tickets, and Michelin star meals. The perfect image of a lonely rich woman. Rick took the bait. He lunged at it like a shark smelling blood in the water. After a few days of chatting, the heiress suggested they meet in person. Rick was ecstatic. The location was set, a high-end steakhouse near his office, the kind where the bill runs 4 figures. Obviously, I couldn't go. Sarah enlisted her cousin, who worked in public relations, to play the part. Her cousin was 5'9", with an aura that filled the room, and decked out head to toe in designer brands, most of them borrowed, of course. When she sat down, she looked so convincing that even the restaurant manager thought a celebrity had walked in. Meanwhile, I was sitting in a KFC across the street. I ordered a Coke and found a seat by the window. A tiny Bluetooth earbud was tucked into my ear. Sarah's cousin was wearing a brooch that was actually a listening device. I could hear their entire conversation in real time. From across the street, I watched Rick, in his cheap suit, his hair slicked back with too much gel, strut into the restaurant like a peacock. His greasy, fawning voice came through my earpiece. For the first half hour, it was the same nonsense he'd sent to Sarah in his voice messages, bragging about his connections, his investment genius, his long list of non-existent success stories. Just as I was starting to lose patience, I heard the cousin's voice. It was cool, with a hint of condescending scrutiny. Mr. Vance, these stories all sound very impressive. But honestly, my ex-husband used to love painting pretty pictures for me too. I could almost picture the look on Rick's face, frozen in a half-smile. I've met a lot of men, her voice continued, devoid of any warmth. They talk a big game, but in reality, they probably can't even make next month's rent. You must be joking, Ms. Wong. My business is built on results. Rick's forced laugh sounded strained. Results? How am I supposed to see that? Her tone was aggressive. Tell you what, Mr. Vance, I don't care about your flashy PowerPoint presentations. I only trust what I can see. You need to prove to me that you not only know how to make money, but that you also have the means to handle problems. I have no patience for indecisive men. The trap was sprung. Rick was clearly cornered. To keep this whale of a client on the line, he had no choice but to take the bait. I'm not sure what kind of means you'd like to see. For example, her voice was casual but sharp as a scalpel. I once invested in a project with a female partner. We had a falling out, and she tried to run off with the money. How would you, Mr. Vance, handle a situation like that? Rick thought this was the ultimate test of his abilities. To project an image of decisiveness and resourcefulness, he walked right into the trap we'd set. Oh, that's easy. Women are the easiest to deal with. You either throw money at them or you find some dirt on them. Once they're scared, they'll fall in line. A dismissive chuckle came through the earpiece. Easier said than done. How do I know you're not just all talk? Her goading was masterful. Have you handled anything like this recently? Give me a real-life example. Show me your results. There it was. The fish had bitten. Rick, thoroughly provoked and desperate to prove himself, let his ego take over. His guard was completely down. An example? Of course. He lowered his voice, leaning forward as if sharing a corporate secret. Just between us, Ms. Wong, I'm in the middle of handling. Let's call it a distressed asset right now. Oh, do tell. Rick began his story, glowing with pride. He wasn't just bragging about manipulating a woman anymore. He was framing Jessica as a case study to showcase his brilliant tactics. She's a married woman, has a little money, but not too bright. Her husband's just some average guy, no ambition. What I'm after is their condo and whatever she has in savings. I haven't spent a dime, and I've got her completely wrapped around my finger. She's filing for divorce as we speak, and we're using some special methods to make sure her loser husband gets left with nothing. Once that money comes through, I'll be able to get several of my other projects back on track. I sat in the KFC, my hand gripping the ice-cold Coke so tightly the plastic cup groaned. Through the earpiece, the cousin's voice, dripping with interest, pressed on. Special methods, such as... Rick was completely hooked. To make himself seem all-powerful, he started spilling his most crucial secrets. Please, what are women most afraid of? Domestic abuse, cheating, all that drama. I taught her a few tricks, how to fake some evidence, get a couple of friends to act as witnesses. Her husband won't know what hit him. He paused, his voice full of self-satisfaction. It's called strategy, Ms. Wong. In business, sometimes you have to play dirty. Interesting, the cousin said, her tone approving. It seems you really are a man who gets things done. What's the success rate on this project? Rick's reply was dripping with confidence. 100%. As soon as the capital from this project is secured, I'll be free to focus all my energy on the new plan you mentioned. I sat there in the noisy KFC, the sounds of the restaurant fading in the background. My world had shrunk to the cold, vicious voice coming through my earpiece. Calmly, I took out my other phone. I opened the voice recorder app, and I recorded every single word coming from the earpiece. Rick, Jessica, your time is up. The day of reckoning came sooner than I expected. Or maybe they were the ones who couldn't wait any longer. It was a Wednesday night, a perfectly ordinary night. I was in the den with Cody, helping him with his math homework. I was showing him a problem, and he was counting on his fingers, his face a mask of concentration. It was a peaceful moment. If it weren't for the storm about to break, I might have deluded myself into thinking we were still a happy family. The den door was thrown open with a violent bang. It was Jessica. She stormed in like a raging lioness. Her phone was held high in her hand, the screen displaying several photos of the bruises on her arm. The photos were cleverly taken. The angles were sharp, the lighting dim, making the marks look horrific. Leo, I want a divorce. Her voice trembled with a carefully suppressed emotion. She was acting, playing the part of a poor woman who had suffered endless abuse. I've had enough. I can't live like this for one more day. Look at you, look what you did to me. How can we go on this? I looked at her clumsy performance, and I felt nothing. Not a flicker of anger. Just a surreal, cold calm. Like I was watching a bad soap opera. Those pictures. I started, my brow furrowed in feigned shock. Don't even pretend. She didn't give me a chance to continue my act. Right there, in front of me, she dialed 911. Her voice instantly shifted into a piercing, hysterical sob. Hello, police? I need to report domestic violence. My husband is trying to kill me. Please, you have to come. Help me. Her screams echoed through the house. Cody was terrified. He had never seen anything like this. He let out a wail and clung to my leg, his small body trembling. Daddy, I'm scared. My heart felt like it was being carved out with a knife. I pulled him into my arms, holding him tight and stroking his back. It's okay, Cody, don't be scared. Daddy's here. My eyes, however, looked over my son's head, coldly staring at the woman I had once loved, who was now a complete stranger to me. Her face was streaked with tears, but in her eyes, I saw a fleeting glint of triumphant pleasure. The police arrived quickly, faster than I expected. It was clear this had all been planned. With them were two other women, Jessica's so-called best friends, the two women I had met at our wedding. The moment they walked in, they started pointing at me, talking over each other in a rush of accusations. Officer, it was him. We saw him push Jessica. He has a terrible temper. We've been telling her to divorce him for years. The commotion had attracted the attention of our neighbors. A crowd was gathering at our doorway, whispering, pointing. Every gaze was a sharp blade, stabbing into me. In that moment, I was public enemy number one. A monster who abused his wife, a hypocrite hiding behind a respectable facade. In front of everyone, Jessica began her tearful recitation of my many crimes. She said I was short-tempered, irrationally jealous. She said I had hit her more than once. She produced the fake photos of her bruises. She even played a few carefully edited audio clips in which you could only hear my raised voice from a work-related argument. Her two friends chimed in, adding their own fabricated details to her story. They spoke with such conviction, you would have thought they lived under our bed. The climax of the drama. Jessica made her demands to the police. She wanted to file for an immediate restraining order. She wanted me out of the house. Tonight. At the same time, a printed letter from her lawyer was handed to me. It was all there in black and white. A petition for divorce. She was demanding full custody of our son. She wanted the condo, and she was suing me for $50,000 in emotional damages. She wanted me left with nothing. That was her goal. She looked at me, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of victory. She thought she had won. She thought she had nailed me to a cross of shame, with no possibility of escape. I took a deep breath. I soothed Cody, who was still in my arms, and handed him to our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Gable, who had come over looking concerned. I asked her to watch him for just a moment. Then, I straightened up and looked calmly at the two officers who were handling this dispute. Officers, my voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. Would it be all right if I showed you a few things as well? I ignored the flicker of doubt that crossed Jessica's face. I walked over to the living room, turned on the television, and connected my laptop. The room fell dead silent. Every eye was glued to the large screen. I clicked on the first video file. The footage was from the camera hidden in the power bank. On the screen, Jessica was sitting alone in front of a mirror in the living room. In one hand, she held a broken egg, carefully dabbing the egg white onto her arm with a cotton swab. Then, with another swab, she carefully applied a tiny bit of soy sauce, blending it in. Soon, a disturbingly realistic bruise appeared on her skin. As she worked, she was on a video call with someone. Rick's voice, a voice I now knew intimately, came from the phone's speaker. Yeah, just like that. Baby, you're a natural. That looks like it really hurts. Jessica laughed, a triumphant, giddy sound. Honey, what do you think? Don't the Oscars owe me an award for Best Actress? I hit pause. Then, I opened the second file. This was an audio recording from a flash drive recorder in the couch. It was a phone call between Jessica and one of her best friends. So when the cops get there, you just stick to the story. You saw him push me. You heard him yelling at me, got it? Don't worry, Jess. You know you can count on us. But about the bonus Rick promised us when this is all over. You'll get it. Once I get the money, I'll give you both a huge cut. Finally, I played the third file. It was a recording from my phone of Rick's bragging at the steakhouse. The chick's not too bright. Once I get the money, I'm dumping her. It's called strategy, Ms. Wong. In business, sometimes you have to play dirty. That greasy, venomous voice echoed through the silent living room. It was perfectly clear and perfectly damning. Everyone in the room was stunned. The crowd of neighbors gasped in disbelief. The two best friends had gone pale, shrinking back against the wall, desperately wishing the floor would swallow them whole. The expressions on the police officers' faces shifted from serious to shocked to utterly furious. And Jessica, there are no words to describe the look on her face. It went from white to ashen to the color of death. She looked like a statue that had its support beams kicked out from under it. Her legs gave way, and she collapsed onto the floor with a dull thud. I walked over to her, looking down at her crumpled form. I spoke, enunciating every word. Jessica, the abuse you were claiming was fake. But you and your lover, Rick Vance, conspiring through fraud and false testimony to illegally seize my personal property. That's real. And one more thing. I took out my phone and pulled up the final piece of evidence. It was the complete file on Rick's business fraud, including all the false marketing materials and promises he had sent to the heiress. In front of the police, I hit send. The recipient was the official email address for the city's Economic Crimes Unit. Your dear lover, Mr. Vance. I looked into her eyes, which were now completely devoid of light, and I smiled. It was the first and only genuine smile I had managed in over a month. He should be having a visit from the police right about now, too. It was all over. Like a loud, ridiculous play, the curtain had finally fallen. Jessica and her two best friends were taken away by the police on the spot for filing a false report and perjury. I watched as they put her in handcuffs and led her to the squad car. She didn't cry or struggle. She just stared at me with a vacant expression, as if looking at a stranger. Maybe, in her eyes, I'd been a stranger for a long time. Rick's situation was even worse. The Economic Crimes Unit acted immediately on the evidence I sent. His so-called investment firm was a house of cards, and it collapsed under the slightest scrutiny. Wire fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement. The charges were undeniable. A long prison sentence awaited him. I heard he was arrested while driving his leased white BMW, on his way to meet his next client. All his debts came to light, and the leasing company repossessed the car immediately. Our divorce was incredibly smooth. It could hardly be called a legal battle. In court, faced with the mountain of irrefutable evidence my lawyer presented, Jessica gave up all resistance. She kept her head down the entire time, saying nothing. The judge ruled that she was the party at major fault in the marriage and awarded her nothing. Full custody of our son was, without question, granted to me. On the day the verdict was read, she never once looked at me. As I left the courthouse, I saw her parents waiting for her by the entrance. Her mother looked as if she had aged 10 years overnight, her hair now mostly gray. She saw me, and her lips parted as if to say something, but in the end, all that came out was a long, heavy sigh. I didn't hate them. I just felt tired. I sold the condo as fast as I could. The home that held 8 years of our marriage, and just as many lies and betrayals. The day the money came through, I felt no joy, just a relief of setting down a heavy, moldy burden. I used the money to buy a smaller, older apartment in a quiet neighborhood near Cody's school. The building was older, and the unit was smaller, but it was on a good floor and got plenty of sunlight. Every afternoon, the sun would stream through the windows, filling the living room with a warm glow. The rumors about me in our old building naturally vanished. The events of that night were retold by the neighbors with various embellishments, spreading like wildfire. In every version, I was the hero, a long-suffering, good man who had brilliantly outsmarted his cheating wife and her con-man lover. The same neighbors who had pointed fingers at me now looked at me with a mixture of sympathy, admiration, and even a little bit of fear. Human nature can be a funny thing. Life seemed to be returning to normal. In fact, it was calmer, more peaceful than before. I quit my soul-crushing design job. Staring at a computer all day, dealing with impossible clients, had felt like a slow death. With the money I had left, I rented a small storefront and opened my own creative studio. I took on projects I was passionate about, created art I actually wanted to make. The income was less stable and money was tighter, but I had plenty of time to spend with Cody. I could walk him to school and pick him up every day. We could do his homework together, build Lego sets together. On weekend afternoons, I could take him to the park to kick a soccer ball and fly a kite. Watching him run across the grass, his face lit up with a brilliant smile, I felt like everything I'd lost had somehow come back to me, just in a different form. Cody was still taking his art class at the same studio, and his teacher was still Sarah. After everything happened, we had a mutual, unspoken understanding not to contact each other. But whenever I picked Cody up, our eyes would meet across the crowd of parents and kids, and we would exchange a brief, knowing nod, like two soldiers who had fought and won the same war. I thought that was the end of the story. I thought the ugly past, like the condo I had sold, would be left behind me forever. But I was wrong. The storm had left one final ripple, a ripple that would change everything I thought I knew. 9. It was a beautiful afternoon. I was at the art studio, picking Cody up from his class. The children burst out of the classroom like a flock of noisy birds. Cody spotted me immediately, holding up his painting and running towards me. Dad, look. Ms. Jenkins taught us how to draw sunflowers today. The paper was covered in a glorious, messy explosion of gold. It was brilliant. Just as I was about to take Cody's hand and leave, Sarah called out from behind me. Mr. Carter, could you wait a second? I turned around. She was wearing a pale blue dress, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. In the sunlight, she looked clean, serene. She walked up to me and handed me a manila envelope. It was thick. "I think this belongs to you," she said. I hesitated, then took it from her. "What is this?" "You'll see when you get home." She didn't say any more, just gave me a small smile and turned back towards the classroom. Puzzled, I took Cody's hand and we walked home. Cody chattered excitedly the whole way, telling me about his day at school. I responded automatically, my mind preoccupied with the heavy envelope in my pocket. Once we were home, I got Cody settled with his Legos. Then I went into my den, closed the door, and opened the envelope. There was no letter inside, just a debit card and several printed sheets of paper. I picked up the papers. The first was a bank transfer record. The date was from 6 months ago, 3 months before I received that first photo from the hotel. The record showed that a transfer of $3,000 had been made from Jessica's personal account to an unknown individual. The memo line read, "Consulting fee." My heart skipped a beat. Consulting for what? For $3,000? I quickly looked at the next page. It looked like an investigation report. At the top of the report was my name, my social security number, and a grainy photo of me, likely copied from my driver's license. The content of the report was simple, dry. It was a detailed log of my movements over the past 3 months. What time I left for work, what time I came home, where I had lunch, and with whom, where I took my son on the weekends. It was so detailed, it even noted the one time I worked late and stopped at the 7-Eleven on the way home to buy a cup of instant noodles. I flipped through the pages, my hands starting to shake uncontrollably. On the final page, there was a summary. In conclusion, the subject, Leo Carter, maintains a simple social circle with no discernible vices. His daily routine is highly predictable, with no abnormal activities. Investigation found no evidence of extramarital affairs, hidden assets, or other related behaviors. Financial records for all known and associated bank accounts are transparent, with all significant expenditures accounted for by routine household expenses and mortgage payments. At the bottom was the name of a private investigation firm I had never heard of. I sank into my chair. My mind was a complete blank. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. A long one. "Mr. Carter, I'm sorry. I debated for a long time whether I should give this to you, but I felt you had a right to know. I recovered these files from Rick's old computer. He had a habit of backing everything up. Before Jessica ever met Rick, she was already suspicious of you. She couldn't believe that a simple graphic designer like you could support the whole family without any complaints. She thought you must have a secret stash of money, or a side hustle, or even another woman. So she took money from your joint savings account and hired a private investigator to follow you for 3 months. I stared at the words, my throat feeling tight and dry, like it was stuffed with cotton. You saw the results. Her next text came through. The result was, there was nothing. Your life was an open book. It was so clean. It was heartbreakingly clean. Your entire life was a straight line between work and home. Your only hobby was taking Cody to the Science Museum on weekends. Every transaction on your bank statements, every penny, was clearly spent on your family. And maybe, Mr. Carter, maybe it was that cleanliness that was the final disappointment for her. She wanted something you couldn't give her. So when Rick showed up, with his leased BMW and his smooth promises, she was ready to jump. That debit card, that's the money the private investigator returned. I heard Rick bragging to a friend that the P.I. said it was the most boring case of his career, and he felt bad taking the full $3,000. So he refunded $2,000 of it. Rick took the money and never told your wife. He spent it himself. I gripped the thin plastic card. It felt as heavy as lead, crushing the air from my lungs. So, that was it. The collapse had begun much, much earlier. It didn't start with the photo from the hotel. It didn't start when that man, Rick, came into her life. It started the moment she began to doubt me, the moment she hired someone to spy on me. That's when it was already over. She didn't cheat because she was disappointed in me. She was looking for a reason to be disappointed. She had already convicted me of betrayal in her own mind. She just couldn't find any evidence. The 8 years of marriage I had fought for, the home I had so carefully protected, it had all been a one-man show. Did I win? I sent them both to hell, but it felt like I had lost too, completely and utterly. 10. I sat in my den for a long time. I sat there until the sky outside my window faded from a bright orange to a deep, bruised purple. The papers and the card on my desk were a monument to my own foolishness, a silent testament to the ridiculousness of the past 8 years. The den door creaked open. It was Cody. He peeked his head in and whispered, "Dad, I'm hungry." I snapped back to reality. Looking into my son's clear, innocent eyes, the cold, overwhelming sense of absurdity that had been churning in my gut finally found an anchor. Right? I still had him. I hadn't lost everything. I stood up, walked over, and ruffled his hair. "Okay, buddy, Dad's on it. What do you want for dinner tonight?" "Spaghetti and meatballs," he cheered. I smiled. A real smile. Spaghetti and meatballs it is. When I got home, the evening sun was pouring through the windows, bathing the entire living room in a warm, fuzzy gold. Cody was in his room, quietly drawing. I walked over to see what he was working on. On the paper, a big hand was holding a small hand. They were walking towards a golden sun, just rising on the horizon. My eyes stung a little. I took out my phone and found Sarah's contact. I wanted to say so much to her. I wanted to thank her for pulling me out of the storm. I want to tell her that I finally knew the whole truth. I typed out a long, rambling message, then deleted it. Typed it again and deleted it again. In the end, I erased every sentimental word. Some things are better left unsaid. That's the unspoken understanding between adults. Finally, I just sent 2 words. "Thank you." I waited for a moment after sending it. No reply. Maybe she was busy. Maybe she felt no reply was needed. I looked at her profile picture, the lazy cartoon cat, still lounging. I hesitated for a second, then long pressed her name and selected delete contact. This is where it ends. We were allies, but the war is over. From now on, we should each have our own new lives. Not disturbing each other is the best possible outcome. I picked up the debit card and the printed papers from my desk, the bank records, the P.I. report. I didn't rip them up. I didn't burn them. I just calmly fed them, one by one, into the new paper shredder in my office. The machine whirred to life. The ugly, absurd past was transformed into a pile of meaningless, confetti-like strips. Let all disappear from my world for good. I went into the kitchen and tied on an apron. I opened the fridge and took out the ground beef and pork. Chopped an onion, minced some garlic, heated the oil in a pan. The sizzle filled the kitchen. The room filled with the scent of cooking food, the scent of life. Outside, the city lights were beginning to appear one by one, like warm, scattered stars on black velvet. It was time for my life to light up again, too. But this time, not for anyone else. Just for me. And for my son.